further gains on that tonight. Chris, just in terms of seeing what's happening in the undergrowth, if you like, with the smaller parties taking ground at the expense of Labour in some places, does that surprise you?
It's interesting, isn't it? And just picking up on the point about the Greens, the Greens have been doing consistently well in local elections for the last 4 or 5 years. And
Woo!
it looks like we're still in the very thinnest of thin pickings, aren't we, in terms of overall results?
Well, to be fair,
don't do us down.
To be fair to the Greens, is that in like Tyneside and stuff, like these are like urban seats a lot of the time. So it's actually that's not NIMBY votes usually. That's usually progressive or progressive votes.
Yeah.
But they're also winning in rural constituencies on NIMBY votes too.
Sure.
Hello again on YouTube. How are you?
Intriguing is how well they do, given that they don't get anywhere near as much publicity, particularly as Labour and the Conservatives. And I guess people are voting knowing that they are not selecting who's going to be a national government. They are selecting a local representative. I think what's interesting just so far, Laura, is a sort of summary thought, is that yes, there is early evidence that the Conservatives might be struggling in places and that Labour are doing relatively well, but not necessarily making a huge leap forward, Labour, from where they were this time last year.
It's almost like, right? It's almost like the Tories have massively collapsed. Labour are offering nothing and have stayed where they were broadly, and that is nothing to do with Sir Keith's phoresmic powers and everything to do with the Conservative Party massively fumbling the bag.
It's not Keith Mentum. No.
Before too long, we hope, going to be able to bring you the result of the Blackpool South by-election, which in and of itself is a very, very important result. That will also give us lots of information that will help create the overall picture of all of this. But the chronology of these elections for councils, for police and crime commissioners, for mayors is not just quite lengthy, but also quite complicated. So, in terms of having grand conclusions at this stage, we should be holding our horses. But there is, Jonathan Reynolds, under these results that we have already, really interesting trends. And are you disappointed to see some of what you've seen, whether it's in South Tyneside seats going to the Greens there, or Greens and Lib Dems benefiting from Labour in Newcastle?
No, to be honest, partly because of the size of the sample. But if you take that Newcastle graph you just showed, I mean, if you have a situation where your vote share's gone up and you've lost seats, it's about the other votes moving around of the other party. So we don't know very much. I would go back to the fact that, first of all, if we had a repeat of what we saw last year, if there's no rallying in the Conservative vote as we get closer to a general election in election year, well, that would be very promising for Labour. And again, when we get the kind of data which will tell us in those key parliamentary seats, which are Conservative at present, and we want them to be Labour, are we making the inroads into those seats that would return Labour MPs in a Labour government? That is what will satisfy me.
And we can see there's some pictures of what's going on in Hartlepool. There's a picture of a lovely ship. Of course, Hartlepool, the proud maritime history, and it does appear Labour have told us there on the ground that they are going to take that council. And you've told us you'd be... But it's
it's good to see the
taking Hartlepool at this stage.
It's honestly not enough.
Yeah, I was thinking with Hartlepool because that's one they really struggled with in like 2021, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was previously a safe place for Labour, wasn't it? Because they literally shipped Mandelson in there way back in the day.
They did. Yeah.
I mean, a less Hartlepool person you couldn't imagine, but they shipped him in there because it's safe,
Yeah.
Actually, the North East in general has been pretty good with Labour because the Tony Blair was North East MP as well.
Sedgefield.
Yeah.
The votes coming to you because they're unhappy with the Conservative Party. There's a complex situation there. It stands as a testament to how Labour has turned itself around, how we've turned ourselves around over the last few years.
You've stayed static. The Tories have just collapsed.
Isn't that proof of just how far you fell in the past, rather than necessarily how much?
The cast iron. Corbyn was scum and terrible, and Keir Starmer by comparison is wonderful, and that's going to be the narrative they're all going to fucking stick to. But it is, like you say, it's not that. The Conservatives collapsing. The Labour Party aren't going to have a massive increase.
It's very, very challenging. But the seats we have won, particularly in those by-elections, beyond our wildest dreams. Let's be frank about that. Seats that are not even ones Labour would need to hold to form a majority government in the House of Commons. You're way beyond those expectations. And then, of course, we factor in things like Scotland, where we've seen a particularly significant turnaround in Labour's fortunes. I think the job that Labour, that we've been able to do, is very, very significant in just 3 years.
Okay, Chris Eaton-Harris, we heard there from our Tim Iredale on the ground, who was saying he'd been chatting to Leah Nietzsche. Now, she's one of your colleagues, a Conservative MP for part of Grimsby, and she was acknowledging to people there tonight that levelling up has not been what it promised, hasn't gone fast enough. The things that were...
The thing I said would be the case, because it was obviously just a veneer of nonsense. Shock horror.
It's a shame, because it's literally, if they've actually done it well as a proper policy, it would have been a really good policy.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they suck and are bad.
Yeah, investing in local areas to lift them out of the deprivation, would be wonderful. But it was never about that. It was a piece of polish to put on there. They invest tuppence halfpenny and hope that the Northerners would buy it, and they haven't. Good.
It was, I think one of your colleagues called it the vaccine bounce election for the Conservatives. We were definitely riding high, and we took
vaccine bounce.
In that thing. We are definitely not in that same position at this point. And whilst I'm obviously disappointed that we're losing we've lost 12 good councillors so far. But it doesn't strike me
you've
that
lost
this
12
is
councillors, not good.
a massive,
No.
great day for Labour so far. But it's
But
such
when you
a
come
small
to your
sample.
own party, isn't the truth, though, actually, if you've just said yourself, you've just admitted you were more popular under Boris Johnson?
Yeah, but there are a whole host of factors in that, coming out of COVID.
Wow.
Definitely being one.
More,
I was in a business in Northern
they were more
Ireland,
popular under the man who at least had like a small amount of charisma and who didn't promise to gut every single one of the public services. Like, wow, crazy, isn't it? How actually people did want more government intervention after all. And austerity Rishi or fucking economic mess Truss were not what the public wanted. Isn't it weird?
Thank you for the gifted subby sub. Much love.
which we are rightly proud of.
But the problem for you is that voters liked you more then when you had a different leader under Boris Johnson. He was a close ally of yours. He said he's still a good Conservative. Very clearly,
He's not.
you are far less popular than you were then.
We are 14 years into a Conservative government, and we've
So
got
it's
a lot to
inevitable
do.
then?
Well, elements of
Well,
it
hang on. You should
are
have 14
in when
years
you're,
worth of accomplishments then
stage,
to
but
sell
we
us.
definitely need
Tell us what you've done in 14 years.
voters who are
We've got a fairer welfare system, Kev.
about us at this point.
What do you...
That's interesting. Well, Chris Eaton-Harris, we are grateful for your time tonight. We're going to say goodbye to
He
you
looks
now.
so
Miraculously,
happy.
you're going to morph into Mark Harper, the Transport Secretary. But we're grateful to you for your time tonight. And let's take you then back to what is one of the first big contests of the night. I think those pictures there are of the count in Hartlepool. Oh, where someone at the lectern is telling us
my
something.
brother
Let's
thought it was
listen in.
pronounced Hartlepool.
Yeah, that would work.
The Cooperative Party, 919 votes. David Nicholson, Local Conservatives, 339. There were 12.
Oh, leftist audio. Love it.
Unmarked ballot papers. Therefore, Corinne Mail, can I ask you to come forward? You're duly elected.
That's the result of one ward there in Hartlepool Council. Labour has told us on the ground there they think they're going to take Hartlepool. Jonathan Reynolds has been telling us here that that is something that they are going to be absolutely delighted about. That overall result from Hartlepool, though, is not yet then confirmed. So I think what we were just hearing there was the result of one ward that was being announced as the night goes on. But as soon as we have an official result in Hartlepool, we will let you know. But it's good to hear returning officers giving us updates, even if it was rather hard to hear. However, let's hear and listen with careful attention to our colleague Helen Catt. Now, Helen, you are at one of the big stories of the night. We don't know which way it's going to go in Blackpool South in the by-election, although you were already telling us a couple of hours ago Labour seems pretty sure of taking it, but the contest is between the Tories for second place. But can you give us an update, at least on when we might get the result?
How far they've fallen. They might finish second.
I really wish I could, Laura, but at this stage, they still haven't started counting any votes here in Blackpool South. They're still on verification. They've just called all the candidates to the table over there to solve some sort of issue. We don't know what it is yet. We're just trying to find out what's going on. But yes, at the moment, not a single vote has...
I'll be honest, chat, I don't think in this stream we're going to be able to bring you the result of this one.
There are
Considering they've counted 0% of the votes so far.
Also, thank you, Scouseraw, for the $3. Much appreciated. Remember, now I'm back on YouTube. You can become a member for 99p or gift memberships to fellow watchers for as money things.
Indeed.
Support stream.
And also,
It's
hello,
late.
Scouse Raw, the Scouser in Australia, I believe.
Absolutely. Well, we're on Aussie time now, so...
True.
probably were still going to be in third. But in recent hours, Reform think they've done slightly better than they thought they had, particularly in poster votes. Oh, hang on, I think we're getting... Aha. I don't know if you heard that. That is progress. The count is starting, finally, here in Blackpool South.
Reform are doing better than expected, but that's the story of the night for most seats.
So the counting will begin,
That's
the
the big
verification
story.
is complete. But fascinating what you were saying, though, earlier. We had a chat with Mark Butcher, the Reform candidate, who said...
Surely there's not another ex-cricketer.
Being in second place might be an option for him. He sounded very, very optimistic, perhaps more optimistic than he was at the beginning of the night. What is it, do you think, that is making the Conservatives think they might have been squeezed into second place? Into third place, rather.
Well, I think it is...
Oh, Greens gained Castleward and Colchester.
When I speak to them earlier, still thought they were hanging on to second place. It's more just that Reform think that they've looked at, when they've started to see the sampling that's been done here, that they think that they performed better, particularly in the postal ballots, than they thought they had previously. Reform are also saying that they thought they'd performed very well with actual in-person voters today, but until we start to get the counting fully underway, I think then maybe a slightly clearer picture of that will emerge.
Okay, Helen, thank you very much indeed, and wave at us if there seems to be more progress. So we're glad, at the very least, that the hard-working counters in Blackpool can now actually get on with the important next bit of the task. Helen will talk to you a bit later on in the programme. Let's just quickly have a chat then with Mo Hussein, who used to work as a Conservative Special Advisor. Thank you for your patience and hanging on to speak to us tonight. It sounds there, from what Helen was telling us, that the Conservatives may well end up in third place in the Blackpool South by-election. We're not confirming that, but that seems to be the way that it is going, according to our intelligence on the ground. If that happened, what would be the reaction of the Conservative Party that you know and understand so well?
Well, it would be hugely concerning. MPs are already jittery, and they have been for a while.
Shitting
and
themselves.
There's a real prospect of a pincer movement. So Labour from the left, and then Reform from the right.
Not really from the left.
And if Reform end up polling well and get an increased vote
Honestly,
share,
I mean,
then
again,
the pressure will be.
we talk about it a lot, and I think it's worth mentioning again very specifically. It's that, like, I'm glad that Reform UK are winning votes from the Tories. Obviously, I like the Tories losing votes, but I just think that I think it's good for democracy that the Tories just get fucking annihilated by their natural voter base for essentially completely ignoring, abandoning, and taking everything they support for granted. It's a small amount of people, that base. But I'm glad that they finally seem to say, no, fuck these people.
To be fair, I think
democracy.
I think they'd have been hurt a lot more in 2019 had the Brexit Party not stood down. That would have been a more accurate depiction of the actual state of affairs in Britain. But what can I say?
Yeah, that's absolutely true, and I just think that, you know, so finally the Reform UK vote is just like we are on the left here, just not being essentially railroaded into giving up because of first past the post and saying, no, fuck it, we're not owed your votes, right? We don't owe we don't owe you any of our support. We've elected you time and time again to deliver on loads of these different things. You've ignored us, so we're gonna fuck you. And I think that's a good thing.
Indeed, absolutely.
Situation, you cannot be all things to all people, and I think
you could be some things to some people.
From Conservative MPs and spokespeople is Tees Valley. That will be the buzzword, and that will be a protective shield for the Prime Minister if that is retained, and that will last for a while. But MPs will still be quite nervous because looking at the underlying results on the local elections, what it means for them in the upcoming general election, that's what will be of concern for them. And they will also remember that, you know, Ben Houchen has campaigned without really even mentioning the Prime Minister or the government, and in
none
fact
of them
has
have.
invoked Boris to try and
Why
help
would
him.
you?
So all of this, I'm afraid, does not bode well.
Mo Hussein, thank you very much indeed for joining us and for your patience in hanging on. It just makes me think of a minister said to me today, there are lots of places where panic
It's funny to me, in
so
South Tyneside, so the Stats for Lefty just posted the full council because that's now all in. So Labour have kept, but with -10, Labour have lost 10 seats. So the majority is now just 2 on South Tyneside Council. The Tories had 1 seat, they now have 0.
Literal wipeout. Yeah, there we go. There's the results on the screen. Yeah, well, that's what I want. I want a leftist pressure to be applied to Labour. I think the local governance factor of, I mean, I experience in Birmingham, and I know a lot of people around the country like local governance by Labour. They tend to do a relatively decent job from a kind of leftist or centrist perspective. So that's fine. I'm no problem with that. But I want a leftist pressure on them both locally and nationally. So the fact that the Greens are doing well, the fact that there are local independents like your man in the northeast, the socialist guy whose name I always fucking forget. That's good. Awesome. That's what I want. This is the perfect situation.
It is absolutely is. So thank you, Mad Monk. If by any chance you happen to be an Amazon Prime customer, first opening a Twitch account, if you're an Amazon Prime customer, you can link it to your Twitch account, and you can give me free money by subscribing with Twitch Prime at no additional cost to yourself, and it gets you all the benefits of being a Twitch subscriber, including my animated and static emotes and ad-free viewing, if you are indeed that. If you're not, then don't worry.
True.
Major test of public opinion before the general election. Labour have retained control of councils in Sunderland, Newcastle,
oh yeah, don't get me wrong.
Fuck
Labour on a national level. Absolutely. When I talk about, I don't mind Labour getting in on a local level, even though it kind of gives a bit of a shine to fucking Keir Starmer. In terms of the practical, on-the-ground governance, they actually do a pretty decent job. And they're to the left of the party in Westminster, and so that's fine. I've got no problem with them getting in, but I want a leftist challenge to these motherfuckers to force them to be honest. You know?
And also on a local level, like the Labour Party is fine. Like the problem with Labour is the tiny fucking Politburo at the top of the party that has like total dictatorial control and beating out the actual, beating soul of the party, which is the memberships and the trade unions. Like that's the problem. Like my local Labour Party, great. I really like my local Labour Party.
Yeah, the Labour Party membership has always been to the left of the leadership in pretty much every fucking time in the party's history. But there was always some semblance of like them giving a few scraps to the party membership at the very least. Even under Blair and Brown, they did that. Whereas this, literally any motherfucker, any Labour supporter, tell me why I should vote for these fucking pricks. Give me any reasoning that I should do that.
By the way, indeed, those independents aren't winning aren't linked to Jamie Driscoll. I don't think. I think it's just other independents. But I think that there's broad kind of dissatisfaction with Labour across that kind of area of the country. Thank you, Mad Monk. Go for it, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, be very careful with independents because some of them are very good, some of them are atrociously bad.
So, some of them are very hilarious, like Jason Zadrozny.
Some of them are very good, yeah. All can't be in face.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So thank you, Mad Monk, for wanting to link it to your Prime account. You just have to click subscribe, then tick the box that says use Prime subscription. That gets you to use it. And there was Niall1797. Prime doesn't re-up automatically. You have to manually go and choose a channel to use your Prime sub for every month. So if you do want to continue to use your Prime sub, or indeed to use it on another channel like Kevin's or somebody else's, you need to go and manually do it every single month.
Thank you, Belvoir P, for gifting a sub to Alethion. And also, hello, Alethion. How are you? I hope you're doing well. Hello there, O-Match. They're presumably answering the question I posed, because the Conservatives have fucked up the UK. That's true, undoubtedly. What are Labour planning to do to actually fix any of that, though? What good are they going to do? If I'm just replacing blue Tories with red Tories, I'm sorry, that's not good enough for me. I'd rather literally waste my fucking vote than vote for that. If you're not even going to offer me harm reduction, I'm not going to offer you my fucking vote.
Exactly.
Instead, she's given him her support. Mr. Swinney's the only candidate to put himself forward, but nominations are open until next week. He said the SNP was not as cohesive as it should be and pledged to create a modern, diverse and dynamic Scotland. A man's appeared in court charged with the murder of the schoolboy Daniel Anjoran in North East London.
Pause that one second, go back to Sky whilst they're doing random other news.
Yeah, we can do. I don't have the Sky open at this particular moment, unfortunately. Sky News. 1 second.
I've just ordered a pizza.
Nice. What you got?
You're going to hate me for this. I'm getting pepperoni and anchovy.
See, pepperoni I'm good with. Anchovy is the devil's work.
Or Labour.
I just like salt, okay? Just love
register
salt.
your protest
Fair
with
enough.
Labour,
They've had salt
this would
with
be
more
an easy
salt.
place to do so. But
And
it
some
will be
popcorn
interesting to
chicken as
see
well.
whether
Just cook it
this is
yes.
because
Popcorn
the
chicken I'm on board
independents
with.
were disagreeing with Keir Starmer over the Middle East, or whether it is over other local factors. I think we're seeing in some areas we have very strong independents, and there are a lot more independents now than there used to be. Some of them are really dug in there and become very well known, and in other areas you're seeing protest votes against Labour going to other established parties like the Lib Dems and the Greens, but certainly that's quite a big loss of seats by Labour in that area.
Oh, they cancelled my bloody order.
Thank you very much. We'll also hear through the night our expert panel, the former Conservative advisor Salma Shah and former Labour advisor, now political strategist.
Yeah, when you said on Question Time they've got a former Conservative advisor, Salma Shah, who was the first one I was thinking of.
No, but we've got this fucking ghoul.
Yeah. Is that going to have an impact, do you think, in the next few hours, the next few days?
I think there's two things to say. One is tonight is already turning out to be a night for none of the above. We're seeing independence, we're seeing reform, we're seeing green votes in lots of places. We're seeing a whole bunch of...
none of the above. Well, why haven't your changes to the Labour Party made you instantly fucking desirable and sexy to the electorate, John?
I mean, to be fair, of all people, John McTurnan has actually had real criticism of the current Labour leadership for offering nothing. Like, this is what you wanted, John. Like, enjoy it. Like, was there something wrong with your order?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. You wanted anchovies and then you realised the anchovies were bad.
Labour's position that went through in the House of Commons for a ceasefire, that position was adopted by the government. The government have voted at UN Security Council for a ceasefire. So Labour has changed its position, changed the government's position, changed the UK position, but I don't think the voters...
Yeah, because you're anti-Semitic, because you don't think that Israel has a right to defend herself, clearly.
And also on top of that, it's like you say, well, you changed your position. Yeah, because you tried to tactically game the electorate and you got fucking punished for it. Like, we all remember what you did. And then how the humiliating climb down you had to do.
Sir Hamas supporter. Yeah, I know him. Jesus.
Resigned from the front bench or was sacked from the front bench. And I think the Labour Party have actually failed to communicate. It's actually it's a political failure. And I think we actually need to convince the country. We have shifted on Gaza. 4 out of 5 people in the country want to see a ceasefire in Gaza. Labour should be standing for those people just as it stands for.
Shut the fuck up. You had a conversation, fucking dickhead rang up Isaac Herzog, the president of Israel, before scuppering the SNP's motion. Don't pretend like you got some fucking fantastic support for the Palestinian people there. You fucking ghoul. Jesus. These people are genuinely demonic.
Painting on.
Yeah, we mustn't forget that, Salma, must we, that these are local elections and things like potholes and Palestine often are really important, aren't they, compared to what perhaps is going on here in Westminster?
Well, what's interesting about local elections is that you never quite know what people think they're actually voting about in them. So, yes, it could be to do with planning. It could be to do with bin collection. It could be to do with council services. It could be to do with the fact that they want to send the government of the day a message about what they see at Westminster. So actually, there's a multitude of factors involved in this. So I think we always have to take that with a pinch of salt, especially when we're reading across to what happens at the general.
Yeah, and just looking at the early results that we've had. So
this is democracy, people. Very bored, tired minimum wage workers counting votes on a fucking badminton court in some little sports hall in the middle of nowhere.
I do love local elections for that. It is cool. Also, somebody just jumped into my YouTube chat called Donna saying, sorry, but how the fuck can you be a leftist and use Amazon or Goggle, for that matter? Saying fuck often does not make a leftist. You understand that from Aotearoa. Have you ever considered that there is no ethical consumption under capitalism? Blah, blah, blah. You participate in society, etc. Also, I don't use Amazon. Other people use Amazon, and then they use that to be able to subscribe to my stream. I am not an Amazon Prime subscriber, but in order to have a career as a political commentator, I can't just, create the entirety of the broadcasting server setup that people like Google and Twitch have. I unfortunately have to use the means at my disposal to be able to disseminate my political message. What, do you think Chomsky wouldn't sell his books at Waterstones? Like, are you 5?
Well, I do have to slightly disagree with you. When you say there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, I would say eating ass is perfectly ethical consumption.
True.
And that person in chat can eat the whole of mine. Bye.
Formed between the Conservatives and Labour, so it'll be a difficult one. I think some of the factor will be about the MP that left and the reasons for his resignation, but I think there's going to have to be some difficult conversations about the kinds of seats that the Conservatives then pursue when it comes to a general election, depending on this result. Again, that is still going to make a lot of backbenchers.
Why can't I exist off whittled sticks, handmade pots to sustain myself? True, crawl the wall, exactly. Only a true leftist reverts fully to monkey.
Look. Socialism is when no Amazon Prime. Fact. It was written in the Bible by
opinion
Marx.
polls is that they've been pointing for quite a while to around 1 in 3 people saying none of the above. Green, reform, whatever. And to that extent, at least, we should remember that neither Conservative nor Labour are necessarily dominating the views of their elections. Well, now, we come to these local elections. And what do we find, at least in terms of early headlines? Reform, 15%, and clearly doing the damage to the...
For the Americans, this is not a skeleton that's been reanimated. This is a real human being who's a political scientist, who's probably the most well-respected of his kind in the country. So you have some fucking respect.
Particularly in Newcastle. And you can see their vote up since last year, and they may be heading for their best performance yet in English local elections. And indeed, if you look in terms of gains and losses, well, when I last looked a moment or two ago, the Greens were up 4 and Labour were up 4, and actually it was independents who've made most gains. So these early results, at least, and we'll see what the pattern comes out later on, but it is a kind of reminder that, particularly, of course, in local elections, but it's also there in the national polls, British politics isn't just about the battle between Labour and Conservative. There are lots of other battles going on as well. Now, all of that said, the change since 2023, it's not that great so far. If you actually, as you strip out the impact.
Oh, thank you, Tom Nicholas, for the raid. Appreciate you.
Yay! Regular Tom, how are you?
Heading for something
absolutely, we're here with watching the local election results with Noah, with Kevin Logan, Milo Yiannopoulos destroying fame. Please go and drop him a follow at KFLogan1875 on Twitch and at Ploppy111 over on YouTube. Everyone in my chats, both on YouTube and Twitch, go and follow Tom Nicholas, which is just at Tom Nicholas on YouTube and Twitch, for excellent political commentary every Tuesday and Thursday is on Twitch, and video essays every once a month, I believe it is, over on YouTube. It's one of the best video essays on YouTube. Highly recommend it. Appreciate the raid.
And you should come and follow me, because Tom already gave me the Tom Nicholas shine by following, so you'd be in good company. That's all I'll say.
We can,
thank you,
or how much can we read across into the likely results, given that this is a general election year, which does make it different to your standard local election year?
Oh, look, I mean, we know the Liberal Democrats do better in local elections than they do in a general election. This is also true of the Greens. There's a question mark about whether or not this will or will not be true of Reform. And, of course, independents, have had something revival in local government, and we are seeing that also tonight. So to that extent, at least, there certainly isn't a straight read across. But I think certainly one of the lessons tonight is that, yes, there is a battle between Reform and the Conservatives for those what we might broadly call the right of British politics. We kind of knew that from the national polls. I think we've also learnt tonight there is also potentially a battle between Labour and the Greens.
Let's fucking go.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Or on the left end of the spectrum.
The more and more I see of it, the more fantastic it is that the cucks, the Change UK people, really thought the British electorate were yearning for a real true centrist party, and never has it been less actually true than.
True. I mean, I mentioned this on Novara the other day as well. When you look at the polls in terms of whether people saw themselves represented in the main parties. It was a majority, it was a plurality of people felt represented by political parties in 2019 at the election time. Now it's like 20% and like almost 60% feel unrepresented by the main parties, and I'm just like, yeah, people want like divisive politics. Like they wanted what people like Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn were putting down.
Yeah,
they were picking that up, and now they've been offered austerity blue version and austerity red version with a haircut, and they fucking despise it.
None of them have managed to grab it for themselves, so that's still in no overall control. And as Bridget Phillipson told us a while ago now, Labour has indeed taken control of Hartlepool Council. There's official confirmation of that now. The count is complete. And there is the list of what we know so far. So there you are. Colchester is still a hung council. Hartlepool is Labour. Gateshead also still held by Labour. No surprise there. Eastleigh held by the Liberal Democrats. That's really one of their strongholds now, the area around Bournemouth. Newcastle has been held by Labour, although as we've been talking about with John, there are some wards going to the smaller parties, and there you can see pictures in Blackpool South of Richard Tice, the Reform leader. I'm not sure if he looks happy or full of anticipation, but he's looking at something very carefully on his press. Oh, laughing away.
That was definitely a racist meme. There's no way that wasn't like a super racist meme he just showed him.
Son's just shaking hands with a supporter there. So Blackpool South, where a lot of the action will be tonight, and we will be there as soon as we've got any news to bring you of what might happen next. But Richard Tice, I'm sure we'll also try to speak to him a bit later in the night, the Reform leader. But just to go back to those councils coming through, Labour holding Newcastle, Labour holding Ipswich 2, Labour holding South Tyneside, where we were talking about just a couple of minutes ago. I can tell you the problem in South Tyneside that's got so many independent votes is the bins. There have been no bin collections today. There's been a bin dispute going on there, and we know how much people quite rightly care about their bins. So Labour's held South Tyneside but lost lots of seats.
Well, to be fair, that is one of the things that local councils are supposed to fucking do. So if it's not being done, people are going to be annoyed at the council. It's one of the things, yeah.
Labour and Broxbourne, which was our first result of the night.
Leopard print is absolutely in back in.
And they held on. And a second, I'm going to bring in Rita, but Chris just...
The LBC chat is filled with where is Sangeeta? That's so vague.
They think they're going to gain...
correct. I think we should go over there and spam as well. No, actually, no, I can't.
Absolutely.
I can't encourage that technically on Twitch.
and they are saying that this is the
brigading.
kind of place that they need to win to gain a majority in a general election. So they're doing that thing of copying across from what they seem to be...
Americans know what bins are, don't they? Trash cans or whatever, like fucking refuse, household refuse collection.
There, and they were only short by 6, so that would be a real victory for Labour that they would definitely want to emphasise to us all as we listen as the night goes on. But let's look at what happened in Hartlepool, where Labour is also very happy to claim a victory. Worth remembering, that was held for a long time by the party, Peter Manelson's old stamping ground, of course. But Rita, what's going on behind the numbers?
Copying me.
Well, here it is. It's a big win for Labour. They have been
thank you,
predicting
the filthy
it for
Kevin, for the 5
fair
gifted.
few,
Appreciate you.
Hours now, but here is the absolute confirmation. As you can see, all the seats are counted, and they have got 24 seats here. The Conservatives and the Independents on 6. And this used to be a Labour council
the 5 gifted
back
and
in
the resub.
2018, and then it went into no overall control from 2019 onwards. And they've gained a fair few seats, as I can show you now. They've gained 8 seats. The Conservatives have lost 6 and Independents have lost 2. So this is going to be a real boost for Labour and go some way to lancing that boil of that by-election loss that they suffered to the Conservatives with the House of Commons seat back in 2021. So that is Hartlepool. And let me just show you where we stand in terms of the state of the parties. So Labour has gained 14 councillors. The Conservatives have lost 28. So they've lost more councillors than they've gained. The night is still young, it's true, but, you know, that's not looking great for them, is it? Lib Dems have picked up 1, the Independents have picked up 9, and the Greens, who, as I was saying, appear to be having a good night of it, have picked up 4.
Let's go!
Rita, thank you very much indeed. Well, Mark Harper, let's talk firstly to you. So it sounds like you've lost Thurrock, Labour on the ground is calling it for them as, again, exactly the kind of place that they need if they're going to...
No, do not be distracted by his literal Chad Wojak jawline. He is a dickhead. Chat. Do not be suckered in, okay?
We've actually had them declared.
He's also such like a fucking charisma vacuum as well.
True. Go back to what I said
every single time he's been on like an interview, like publicly, he's just absolutely soiled himself.
True.
Which your seat calculator does. The last time most of the councils, the mayoral contests that are up, which we're not going to get any of those tonight, and the police and crime commissioner elections, most of which I think are coming tomorrow. Last time they were all fought was in 2021. That was a very unusual thing. We had the vaccine bounce post-pandemic, where
Jesus Christ, they're all saying vaccine bounce.
Fastest in the world at rolling that out, and I think independent commentators think that had a really big impact on what was our best set of election results then since 2008. So that's a very high base if you're going to compare things to. So I think I said earlier, you know, that's going to make it very difficult to hit that.
Well, look at the voter percentages rather than the number of wins.
Exactly.
Like,
we obviously fight
this
very
isn't
hard
just you
for every
losing.
seat.
This
Our
is like
councillors,
voter drop-offs of like 20%, sometimes even 30%.
Exactly, and it's if this was even remotely replicated at a general election, you're going to get fucking trounced.
Oh, it's going to be a complete wipeout territory.
Yeah.
And they've been out campaigning today really hard across the country. And I mean, we've had some results. We haven't had very many, and it's early days yet. And we'll reach we know we're not going to reach a complete picture until Saturday night.
We're not, but the point you've made yourself is that you've admitted you're less popular now than you were in 2021. And the big difference then to lots of people watching tonight is that you had a different leader. Boris Johnson was in charge, and Rishi Sunak has just not been...
Does she really just want to ride his dick, or what? She's just Boris Johnson. We need Boris Johnson back. You need to get Boris Johnson back.
We had a massive bounce from that.
And
that was acknowledged by independent experts. That was a cross-government effort, and Rishi Sunak was the one that found the money to pay for it. And that was a high watermark. It was our best set of local election results since 2008. The best set we'd had at any point since we were in government.
And
so that's a very high water
2023 was pretty much the worst set you just had. We just mentioned Thurrock there. Chris, absolutely right. We can show you now that Thurrock is still counting, but Labour on 23 seats. They need 25 for a majority, but they're on 23. The Conservatives just on 12 seats there, and Independents on 6. Let's show you how seats have changed hands. Labour has gained 5, the Conservatives have dropped 6, and Independents gaining 1. And Thurrock in the southeast of England, I think Labour...
Labour are making an argument that says this is just the kind of place that they need to win come a general election. Some Conservative sources I'm hearing from are making the point, and you can see other examples of this elsewhere in England, that this is a council that has had a really bleak time, has effectively gone bankrupt and therefore had to crank up council tax. And so with that, we might be seeing an element of a local response to that. Curiously, a couple of hours ago, talking to some Labour sources, they were saying exactly the same in Birmingham, which is a Labour-controlled council, in terms of the effect that they think that might have on their performance in that part of the West Midlands in the mayoral contest there. So in and amongst the national picture that inevitably we're trying to paint, there can be very significant local factors that might motivate voters in a particular direction in judging the capacity of a previous administration to either run their local services well or the amount that they're charging them in tax.
And you haven't even mentioned the bins in South Tyneside, which caused what we saw to be a very significant change around there. But just to be clear, is Labour calling the Thurrock result now? Because by our numbers, they might still be short of a majority, even though they've gained seats. But Labour
now...
So
they think that
I would be very surprised if the Thurrock Council didn't at least go into no overall control, given the fucking mess.
Their spokesman saying that people
and the worst
Thurrock
mess
have
as well.
like
you just the only people to blame for the mess in Thurrock, the councillors.
Spin, if you like, from Labour, but with some very particular local factors, it would seem to be playing at least some role.
Well, a council tax rise of 8% is not certainly insignificant, particularly when people have been living.
God almighty, the tax rise we're due in Birmingham soon enough is going to 8%. We wish it was fucking 8%. Jesus,
wasn't it up to 20%? Wasn't like 21 on that one?
Yeah. They're gonna. It's so big under the British law. We actually have to have a fucking a plebiscite on that because it's so high, and I'm gonna have to vote for it to get worse services at massively inflated cost. Fucking brilliant.
hours. There's a scene there in Exeter now there. I always wonder what's going on in people's minds, and are they thinking about the cameras being on them, or are they just looking nervously?
All because, by the way, sexist shittery in the past that I had nothing to do with. Fucking jokes, man.
Not focusing on the cameras, you're definitely focusing on what the results are. But look, I'll just pick up one point you were saying earlier when you were talking about the results, about what they tell you about the conversation about the general election and are Labour doing well enough, and how are we doing? So obviously you're looking at council results so far, that's all you've had. I'd also say you've got to look at some of the mayoral contests, some of the big ones that are up. When I was campaigning in last week in Ben Houchen's area, in the Tees Valley, that's an area where Labour have got to be doing well. You'd think, looking at the opinion polls, if they're going to win.
And we talked about that quite a lot at the beginning of the programme.
Forgive me for not.
No, not at all. And I'm sure you were.
I was on another channel.
You're on another rival, our friends on another channel. But also we don't get those results until tomorrow afternoon and Saturday.
I agree. So one of my points, what we will see, hopefully in those places, Mark, is I think perhaps the full mayoral result we were saying earlier in Tees Valley, probably beyond Labour, I think. But will we see a swing that will take those key parliamentary seats, Redcar and stuff?
Just to explain the sexist nonsense of the past, right? So there was, because of equal pay laws that have been introduced, quite rightly, they've been able to, Birmingham, former and indeed current, underpaid, largely women, employees of Birmingham City Council have been able to get backdated equal pay on the basis of the fact that they were being underpaid for decades. Some of these claims go back to the 1960s, and so the Birmingham City Council has been fucking bankrupted, on top of the Tory cuts for the last 16 years as well. So all of that combined means we are literally fucking broke. We're going to have to sell off billions of pounds of public assets in Birmingham, as well as a massive tax hike and worse services. And that might save the council from collapsing. Brilliant.
Yay.
One of your strongholds.
Very pleased about that.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, why do you think you managed to do it?
I think it's just,
And by the way, I don't begrudge those people that pay. They deserved it. That's, but it's still fuckery that I have to pay for it. Why don't the fucking dead dickheads who did the sexism have to pay for it? Dig them up and make them pay for it.
We're getting rewarded at the ballot box. But I think also there is a lot of disillusionment with the Conservatives, and we're finding this time and time again. I'm certainly finding it when I was speaking to my voters on the doors in Richmond Park today.
Country.
And right across London. I've mostly been in London for these local elections. But I think, just to go back to Mark's point, we're expecting to see gains as we go through. We haven't obviously seen a huge amount so far. These are not necessarily our areas of strength that have been reporting so far. We're expecting to see gains. We're expecting to see good progress, but specifically in the areas where we hope to win parliamentary seats.
And talking of which, Eastleigh, right now, you've got two Conservative MPs there. Paul Holmes in Eastleigh, Steve Bryan, Winchester.
I'm fascinated by this comment. Should have predicted internet leftists campaigning for Trump at the worst possible time. Thanks for selling me out, you fucking Judases. What are you talking about? Have we? Is this Brenna Wu? No, this is Stuffed Pink Owl, whoever that person is. It might as well be Brenna. What the fuck
is it a tweet?
No, it's in my Twitch chat. I don't know who the fuck they are.
Why are we campaigning for
have we mentioned Trump
we're covering the British local elections. We're supporting the Green Party. I mean, to be fair, I did retweet. So there's literally at the Palestine encampment. There's like a counter protest from Trumpists, and both sides are shouting "fuck Joe Biden." And I'm just like, horseshoe theory doesn't mean what you think it means.
Yeah, it could just be that he's quite unpopular.
He did say he was going to unify the country.
True. It could just be that he's actually quite unpopular. People don't like him, yeah.
Turns out people on the left don't like, supporting ethnic cleansing campaigns from foreign governments and the military police crackdowns on the right to protest. And rightoids think that he's woke.
Yeah. Also, Rohak is quite correct. Don't care, still voting for Cenk. True. Fact. I'm voting for Cenk in all 50 states.
Here's how Cenk can still win.
Exactly. Cenk can still win. With Bernie as his running mate. Let's go!
and can't quite be with us till the bitter end. So let's talk to her now. Welcome to the programme. We've talked quite a lot about
thank you for the prime,
impact
Madman. Appreciate
of
you.
the Labour leadership's position on foreign affairs might have. And we have seen in some places what looks like some voters turning away from them because of that. How significant an issue do you think it might be for the Labour Party tonight?
Well, I think this is an issue that Labour strategists are going to be monitoring very carefully. I mean, Labour wants to be winning as broad a coalition as possible.
Like, if anyone is a poster child for how fucking corrupt our politics is it this lady who was essentially campaigning like within Labour to get rid of Corbyn, who was a policy advisor to Ed Miliband, who then became like a front and centre Times radio journalist, is now just like a fucking Labour peer. It's just all so fucking inbred.
Yep. When Keir Starmer was
I said
actually
fucking
at
there
his
because I'm a leftist,
lowest
by the way,
ebb.
apparently.
You know,
That is
people were
true.
saying that he was even considering quitting at that point, and now, you know, here we are a few years on, and the party has changed so much. The other thing which I do think is interesting is Thurrock. I mean, that's an area which Labour has always wanted to get back, and it's one of those very important seats if they are going to win a substantial majority. But I don't think Labour can ignore the impact of foreign affairs. But the other story of the night, and of course, we're very early in this process, as you've been saying, it won't really...
The impact of foreign affairs, like supporting the genocide that's happening right now. Because they have a right to defend herself. They do have a right to cut off fucking internet.
She has a right to defend herself. Remember, trans women aren't women, but Israel certainly is one, apparently, according to Siki.
Exactly. Well, under Labour's policy, Israel will be allowed to access women's wards at hospitals, but trans people will not.
Muslim voters, but some voters who clearly have felt discomfort and unease with the leadership's position on the Israel-Gaza conflict.
Well, I think you've just made a very important point there. Many people just stereotype this and say it's just Muslim voters who care about this, but there is a broader coalition of people across society of different ages, different backgrounds, who of course are really traumatised by what's happening in the Middle East. And also people can see that this is a very difficult issue and that there are two people in a lot of pain here, the Jewish community and of course you look at what's happening in Gaza as well. I think
hey, Ronan the Best, thank you for the 10 gifted over on YouTube. Appreciate you.
To reach out to people more, to have more nuanced conversations about this. They've now called for a ceasefire, and David Lammy is out talking to people a lot. But, you know, this is going to be a very sensitive issue. And if Labour does win power at the next general election, foreign affairs and foreign policy is something which historically is difficult for Labour, and I think Labour will want to win all across the...
It doesn't need to be. Just don't do the fucking genocide support.
I know, right?
And they like illegal. Don't do illegal wars of oil conquest in the Middle East as well. Would be super cool, actually, if you could do that. Or not do that.
Like it's incredible how the bar is so fucking low, as in don't aid or abet war crimes. Tony Blair did it in like 3 years, and Keir Starmer did it before he's even Prime Minister.
True.
25 seats there for the Labour Party, 13 for the Conservatives, 6 for Independents.
Finally, have a pizza on the way now.
Let's
Jesus,
look at the way
it's so
the seats
fucking
have
long.
changed hands. Labour has gained 6, the Conservatives have lost 7. Now, as Chris was telling us, Thurrock Council has had a shocker. People who live there have had to have an 8% rise in their council tax. They've had to contend with a big rise to that during a cost of living crisis. So, as ever, there's always a local story.
Good night, Belvoir.
Thurrock, in terms of the national story, will be something seen as a big victory for the Labour Party that they'll be delighted about, as I'm sure we'll hear in the next few minutes of the programme. Let's remind you of the scene at Blackpool South, where the counting is underway in the by-election. That's going to be one of the big headlines of tonight's set of results. Are whispers on the ground
more
there.
I think that she's describing
that
the running of Thurrock as being a
in
shocker,
first
not
place,
Labour winning
but
it.
It may be too close to call between the
I
Conservative
can't believe I ordered a
Party
pizza instead of
and
growing my
the
own wheat and
Reform
tomatoes like
Party
a
for
street
second.
activist.
And remember, not long ago we were talking to the Reform.
I mean, I would rather not use Just Eat.
Also, I can't help but feel you should hand in your leftist card because you didn't say you'd ordered a fucking pizza.
True. I didn't swear enough whilst making comments about the food that I had ordered. I mean, I try and use the ones which are going through Just Eat as like an actual. They're using their own drivers who work for them and getting paid a living wage, but you know, you can never guarantee with this. I just hate the app world. I wish. I think the problem is having like the ability to, you know, have your own website for you to make those orders on. It's also something that very few of these places even have. Luckily, the one down the road from me would do, but they're close.
Yeah. How many people are employed in the UK building weapons of war? Actually, not many. It's an enormously inefficient system in terms of government expenditure for jobs created. No, that should matter because we should also just not be creating these fucking weapons in the first place. But you know.
No, I mean we buy more weapons from Israel than we sell to them.
Yeah.
We have worked so hard to get the trust of the people in Hartlepool back to Labour. And I think that's probably what's done it tonight.
So it was hard work then, rather than the leadership changing things?
A lot of hard work, Laura, a lot of hard work. We've been trying to engage with people for a long time, not just the last few weeks.
Hello, Grimpy Coffee.
Showing them that we
Everyone go and follow
have
Grimpy.
a Labour group in Hartlepool who can lead the council well, and that we have
it's weird
committed
how
people.
She said we've been working really hard on a local level to try and show residents that we're going to be positive for the communities. And Laura Koonsberg's like, actually, is it not to do Sir Keith's forensicness? Fuck off, Laura.
It's very, very difficult. You wouldn't believe the transformation in the Labour Party in the last few years. Except a lot of our viewers might think, well, hang on a minute.
Searing political analysis from the No Justice stream today. I just swear it. I swear and tell political analysis to shut up.
And you work for Jeff Bezos, you evil
witch. I am a independent contractor of Jeff Bezos.
True.
Locally, it reflected really what was happening nationally as far as the Labour Party was concerned. We had quite a difficult time in Hartlepool going back a few years, where we actually then dropped to 6 councillors in the Labour Party, in the Labour group, and we've risen up over the years, bit by bit, and got back to actually, I think, making people realise that we are to be trusted and that we can do the job that we are now going to be doing.
And do you think that you'll, from this, be able to take back the parliamentary seat when it comes to the general election?
I think that's highly likely. I think that knocking on the doors and talking to a lot of people over the last weeks and months, there are people feel that they want change, and people feel that the Labour Party has changed enough for them to put their trust in them.
The northeast of England was traditionally a Labour stronghold for such a long time, but then Brexit changed that very significantly in many parts of it. Do you think that Brexit has sort of disappeared as an issue for you on the doorstep, and that's part of why you've managed to win again?
Well, I think certainly it's had a big effect. I think the fact that Brexit really didn't happen as people thought it would happen, and that people are still waiting for it to happen. And I do think that that had a big effect. So the swing that happened in Hartlepool, for example...
Well, literally, when Boris Johnson made the claim, and it was true, although I don't think he believed it or ever had a plan to do anything about it, but when he said, after the 2019 general election victory, the red wall, the northern seats that had never voted Conservative in generations, who went with the Conservatives, that he was going to have to repay their trust in him by giving them the things they wanted, right? The 40 new hospitals, blah, blah, blah. And the Conservatives didn't take that message on board at all, including Boris Johnson's own government, because they didn't do that. They did the exact opposite of that. And then they wonder why the people who voted for the 40 new hospitals, who didn't get 40 new hospitals, were annoyed and voted for anyone who offered them anything at all.
Yeah, like... If they'd actually done what they said they were going to do and become like a more kind of fiscally interventionist party that also, was, British nationalist and were pro-Brexit and also kind of happy to do police crackdowns, but also were generally kind of, banning conversion therapy with creating green jobs or whatever, all the things they said they wanted to do, You know, then they would have had a gigantic voter coalition that would have lasted for an age. Turns out Boris Johnson's a twat, and he was never going to be able to keep that together.
True.
Someone just commented on my YouTube videos, who runs a funk hits channel on YouTube under her own name, with 71,000 subscribers.
Okay.
I mean, I'm glad that she's interested in leftist politics as well as like the channel looks like it's so old and so kind of like it's definitely old YouTube, because the banner is just the name of the channel.co.uk in Comic Sans.
Oh,
I mean,
nice.
I appreciate you. I mean, their first upload was, let's have a look. First upload of this channel was, wow, a long way back. It was 13 years ago. It was at 2.8 million views. David Joseph, you can't hide your love from me.
Oh wow, well there you go.
And they've had a grand total of 0 AdSense revenue. It's all copyright.
Yeah, cool. Well, naturally, yeah.
Angela Rayner isn't here, but her Westminster seat, a bit of that falls into this council.
Shelley, thank you very much indeed. Let's put that straight to Jonathan Reynolds, the Shadow Business Secretary. And as Shelley was telling us, people in Oldham were putting Keir Starmer's comments on leaflets, and his comments seem there on the ground to have lost you votes. Do you accept that?
Well, as I said at the start, that's been an issue. That's been difficult.
I believe Israel does have that right. It is an ongoing situation.
Obviously, next door to me in Tameside.
Again, searing political analysis.
Maintain control of the council. We might lose a couple of seats, but gain a couple of others. But yes, that has been challenging. Again, look at the results that we have seen tonight. We've talked about one area where it was the bins that was the major issue. Here we're talking about a major foreign policy issue. This is why local politics can be hard, and you've got to be covering all of
the freaks really do come out at night. Random person who I don't know, doesn't subscribe to me, just commented in my YouTube chat, Jesus saves, hell is real. Thank you.
Hamas real.
Hamas real, true.
Hamas real, the new super state.
Yeah.
We're going to create in Palestine.
Jesus Christ.
That's our one state solution.
And you still handle it in the right way. Okay, and when you
actually,
see
the real, true and based single state solution is turn all of historical Palestine into Kurdistan.
Literally. Or just reform the Ottoman Empire. Fuck it. Go on.
Roman Empire.
Let's go.
See, people seem to want to go back 2,000 years. Fine, fuck it.
Yeah, exactly. To Roman Judea. Let's have it.
Sort of political lives, an active peace process. You know, for people like me, I think of Yitzhak Rabin, I think of the Barak government. I think of times where that has been a process.
Yitzhak Rabin.
Oslo,
right.
Not
my favourite thing about Yitzhak Rabin. First of all, during the first Intifada, he told people to break the Palestinians' bones. And second of all, you know the expulsions from Lida and Ramla during the Nakba? Most people don't even know this fact, but yet the famous peace leader of Israel, Yitzhak Rabin, was the commander of the battalion that ordered the expulsion from Lida, which is widely renowned as the most violent of all of the expulsions during the Nakba, where they sent Palestinians on a death march from those particular villages in historic Palestine to where they ended up in the West Bank, where loads of people died due to dehydration and malnutrition, literal actual death marches. And he was the guy who sent the order, Yitzhak Rabin, as member of the Haganah.
Yeah, the peace boy. Yeah. So much peace. So much peace.
Big peace.
We all know just how people quite rightly feel about the situation, about how we all want to see this conflict come to an end, how we all want a peace process.
Jesus saved. Dalglish gets the rebound. He shoots. He scores.
True.
Again, I think let's not get carried away. Let's see the full results, Chris, at the end of this. I still think I would caution anyone in making assumptions about whole communities or about an issue like this being the deciding issue in a general election. People will always, I believe, when it comes to a British general election, be thinking about the cost of living, about public services, about what it means for them and their family. Doesn't mean foreign policy is not important. Of course it is, but it's only going to be one of those factors in that.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for now, Jonathan. I want to say
they are so desperate for that issue to just fuck off and not return. They just need it out of the way.
We'll be back with all of you shortly.
Not because they care about the people of Palestine.
Let's remind you on where our seat totals are so far. You can see there Labour has gained 23. They've made it over the century mark. First party to do so on 109. The Lib Dems have gained 5 seats, and the Tories...
Oh, Labour have raised their bat for the 3 century. That's lovely.
Absolutely, absolutely.
They've just lost another one. At this stage, the Tories are losing more than 60% of the seats that they are defending.
Oh,
At this
fucking
very
hell.
early stage,
It's
that
a
is the
bloodbath.
Tories heading for what worse than what might have been expected if indeed they do lose.
If they
60%
continue at
of the
this rate,
seats that
they'll
they
lose
were
almost
defending.
600
so
seats.
far they are
And
on
I
a
thought
bad
400
track.
would be a bad night for them. It's going to be, see, people keep underestimating the level to which there's not electoral tightening. So for people who don't know, electoral tightening is this idea that you take the don't knows, who will probably vote but don't know who they're going to vote for, and you kind of spread them out between the main parties based upon their likelihood. And a lot of pollsters do this in their assumptions when they do their overall poll results. I know YouGov does this less, which is why they poll the Tories less more often. And people are just assuming that when it comes to the election, the don't knows are going to say, oh, well, I've usually voted Tory, but they're bad, but, can Labour be that bad? That's not going to happen. Like, I swear down. Like, I mean, call me being somebody who is a little bit not skeptical enough, but I genuinely believe those people will either not vote, or they might go to Reform, or they'll just or they'll move to Labour because Labour seem to be like to be a shoe-in because they don't get criticised enough. Like, I genuinely believe that the Tories might end up being completely wiped out, especially if Nigel Farage campaigns.
Yeah, good. Oh, Labour up to 111, so I'm hopping up and down on one leg until that changes.
On 3. Now, the Conservatives have held this council since the year 2000. It's never been Labour, but let me just show you what's happened to the share of the vote. This is since 2021, and look at that. I mean, how striking that is. Labour up 15 points
I don't even
since
know where
2021,
Rushmore
and the
is.
Conservatives down 14 points. This in a council that is really very much a Tory stronghold.
Yeah, look at that, the history,
So
Tory,
it's
Tory,
too
Tory,
close
all
to
the way.
call, we're being told, but we'll come back to you as soon as we've got more
Where is it?
information.
Thank you, Rita. And that would be the first time that Labour has held that council in Hampshire. Interesting because it's a military base. Aldershot is the main town in Rushmore Council, so really interesting if Labour managed
What
to
happens in
take
Aldershot
that,
stays
as
in
it
Aldershot.
appears they might be on course to do, but too close to call. Let's take you to somewhere else that might be too close to call, but somewhere that's been very, very tightly fought, one of those Labour Conservative battlegrounds. Let's go to Redditch and my colleague James Pearson, who's there for us
just down
on
the
ground.
road.
So what are you hearing, James, since we spoke to you last?
I used to work in Redditch a long time ago.
So counting has been underway here for about 40-45 minutes. We should start getting those first results to add to your seat totals in the next sort of hour or so, maybe a final result between 4 and 5. Now it's slipping back, it's very slow here. I've been trying to speak to the different parties to get a sense of what's going to happen here. The Conservatives have had a very slim majority on this council of 3 for the last year, so they are up against it tonight in terms of defending control of the council. They've not admitted defeat yet. They still think there's a chance they could hold on to some seats here, maybe even control. Labour, quietly confident. Speaking to the smaller parties, though, the Lib Dems and the Greens, they do feel that Labour's done enough to take this council tonight. It's a council, Redditch, that Labour's national campaign has targeted as a place they can make gains in, both in this local election and in the general election coming up as well. So, from speaking to the smaller parties, it does sound like Labour's done enough here tonight, but we'll have to wait for those seat results to start coming in the next hour.
And James, when you've been talking to people during the campaign, what are the issues that have been shifting votes around, you think?
So there are some big local issues as well as the national picture. Locally, the Conservatives have tried to make a lot of the fact that Redditch has attracted just over £20 million of levelling up money to regenerate the town centre, to regenerate the train station. Labour, though, have basically been
Yeah, but that's because it fallen into disrepair for the previous decade. You can't just starve places of money and then give them enough to make it look vaguely sensible again and then expect people to be thankful for that. You should have been investing that money all the way along.
That there hasn't really been enough investment in Redditch the last couple of years, so that's something that's come to play. From going out with the political parties on the doorstep, you do get the sense as well that there are a lot of Conservative voters who will take
I need to go to the loo, so please explain my
vote for Conservatives this year, and that could be the main thing, Conservative voters deciding they don't want to vote this time.
Hello, Helena's chat. Don't forget to give Helena money, otherwise I will bring down wrath upon you. Metaphorically.
battleground. And James there mentioning the power of the sofa vote, because of course staying at home is a different kind of vote, but a vote nonetheless. Let's take you around the country. We can show you what's going on in Plymouth, where there is counting going on, and it looks like people are waiting for something that might be imminent.
Waiting
we'll
for
listen in
something.
carefully there and bring you it when there's any. Oh, there's someone coming onto the stage, so let's just take a listen in. It may be just one ward results, but let's have a listen, because why not?
Oh, hello. Here we go. Is there a monster roving loony party? I do hope so. You can always tell.
I, Tracy Lee, being the returning officer for the election of a ward councillor for the Plimpton Earl ward, do hereby give notice that the number of votes recorded for each candidate is as follows. Endine Peter, Reform UK, 221. Glennie Suzanne, the Conservative Party candidate, 336. Jakes Michaela, commonly known as Jakes Mickey, Green Party candidate, 114. Loveridge Andrea Victoria, Independent, 896. Oran Christopher Michael, Liberal Democrats, 235. Soper Sebastian Anthony, commonly known as Soper, Seb, Labour and Cooperative Party, 483.
Ward result there, but it sounds like that ward there in Plymouth was taken by an independent. Very, very close call between the Reform Party and the Liberal Democrats, only 4 votes in it. But that particular situation there, Susan.
Plimpton isn't real. You just made that up. That's not a real place. Behave yourselves.
Independent, which is something we've seen in a few places tonight, not least in South Tyneside, where there's the story of the bins and the independents have done.
Fucking Plimpton. Don't forget, if you're from Plimpton, or even if you're not from Plimpton, you can hit the follow button and you can subscribe. You can subscribe with Amazon Prime. You can give subs to the community. You can do bits messages. You can become a member on YouTube, and you can do super chats. These are all available to you on both Helena's channel and my own.
We've been looking at the areas where we think we can win. So where the feedback that we get is that Conservative voters want to switch.
Good question. What the fuck is Plimpton?
True. They're the answer. And that's where we're putting our resources. Now, many of those seats will come through tonight and on Saturday. So we knew that sort of the early returns would not be particularly catching. So what we think is some of the impact that we've made over this election. And the feedback, from places like Oxfordshire, from parts of Hampshire, where we've been looking at Hertfordshire, that the very early days, we're obviously relying on people actually standing at the counter and watching the boxes. But that feedback is frankly looking good. Otherwise, we've been expecting a Labour surge. It
hasn't happened.
Surprised that sometimes the independents are pipping that at the post.
And why do you think that is?
I'm not in the...
Because Keir Starmer's a shithouse. End of story.
To understand what the local issues are, because it can easily be the bins. I do think that where we've been focusing our efforts are to say we want to get rid of the Tory government at the next general election.
Yeah, hello,
we
as
also
friends
want
Rust.
to be right by people in their local area, but essentially, as we have to target our resources, we have to bring those two thought processes together.
What then about tactical voting? Because small parties like, whether it's the Lib Dems or the Greens, you can't be everywhere. But what you would say, what you've just said, is you want to see the back of the Conservative government. The Greens would also say they want to see the back of the Conservative government. The Labour Party, Jonathan Reynolds, you would also say you want...
Thank you, Rohack, for gifting a sub. Much love.
Tactical voting and working together.
Well, I don't think we are working together. We're certainly not from the centre, because we think that the voters really need to have the freedom to be able to make their choice. But when you've got a first-past-the-post system, people do it on a sort of do-it-yourself basis.
DIY tactical
DIY tactic, or DIY, alternative
Plimpton
voting.
ain't easy.
They do it themselves, and I can understand perfectly why.
I'm straight out of Plimpton.
Make that shift. They then stick because they get to know Lib Dems who frequently they might not have been very familiar with under other circumstances.
So, I mean, I agree with that. Voters make those decisions. If you're a Labour candidate or a Liberal candidate or a Conservative, you don't control those voters and transfer them to other parties. I think that's always a misconception. One thing we saw.
Yeah, and on top of that, they'll say things like, "Oh, let's build a progressive alliance to be able to get the what progressive. What progressives? What the austerity supporting Liberal Democrats from 2010 to 2015, or the currently austerity supporting Labour Party? Like, what's progressive about the current Labour Party? Like, where's that alliance coming from?"
Well, they're progressing the national bus towards the cliff edge.
True.
Incumbency part of that. Sometimes that's Liberal, sometimes that's Green, sometimes that's Independent. That is what has made local politics much tougher in the way you don't really get, if I'm being honest, an extrapolation of the national polling into those local areas, and then you put in the bins and LTNs
Except
and all
you
of
just
that
go back to the idea of tactical voting, though. It is one thing for you two to say, well, people kind of do it
Speaking
themselves.
of considering tactical
it is
voting,
another thing, though.
There is a thing called, I don't know if you've heard of the South Devonshire primary. So it's a new seat that's being created, and what they've done is they've taken it upon themselves to have a hustings for every non-Tory candidate, and people will just vote based upon who they think. They'll essentially have an internal vote to see which of the candidates they like the best, and then have that as the local champion to take on the Tory in a single united thing, which is interesting because obviously the other candidates will still stand, but the results of what happened within the primary will then corral people around a singular vote, which makes it more interesting. It's probably a more interesting way of doing it than just expecting certain parties to fold to the others just because they were closer to winning at the last election.
Especially given the Lib Dems and their penchant for just saying only the Lib Dems can win here when they finish 5th.
Fucking Lib Dems.
Ridiculous. So, I like that. And basically anything to keep a Tory out, that's fine. Good.
Yeah, it's understandable.
Do you sometimes feel a bit, as a Conservative at the moment, whether it's voters or whether it's these two ganging up against you, everybody you say wants to get rid of the Conservative government?
No, I don't.
You are shit, yeah.
It's going to be difficult because we're operating against that high base. We're in government, and if you're in government, it's always difficult when you have local elections. But also, as I said earlier on...
It's not actually. There's some years when governments do gain.
Well,
that happened in 2011, I think, 2015, 2017. It's not always the case.
It doesn't happen very often. And as I said, 2021, when we did very well, was an unusual one. And also, as I said, this time, we've got an unusual set of elections, because it isn't just council elections. It's Police and Crime Commission elections. We're only going to get 2 of those tonight. And there's those very important mayoral contests as well. And we're not going to get those tonight either. And I think you do need to just wait and see what the overall picture looks like before you start drawing conclusions. And as we said, we're not going to know that till, well, even past match of the day on Saturday.
And that's absolutely right. However, whether it is what we know so far, where the Conservatives at the moment are losing, it seems around 60% of the seats that they're defending.
This reminds me of when Chris, I know you weren't watching this, Kev, but when Chris Philp was asked about the poor polling for the Conservatives on Laura Koensberg, he was like, it's like, oh yeah, people are grumpy with the Conservatives. And I'm like, it's a bit of an understatement, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolute collapse in polling. People absolutely despise you and laugh at you every time you're in a public place. It's a bit grumpy, but they'll come round to the election.
Yeah, I don't think they will, somehow. Did the London guy win? I'm going to guess you're American. That won't be announced until, I think, at least tomorrow, possibly even Saturday. London's quite big. London's a very big place with millions and millions of squillions of people. So
most of the mayor elections will be announced on Saturday.
Yeah. But I'd be very surprised if he didn't.
To support people, get more people who've fallen out of the labour market into work. Big announcement on defence, paid for by reductions in getting the size of the state back to where it was
well, I mean, your
before
defence
the
announcement
pandemic.
is the same as what Boris Johnson promised in 2022, and you said your changes to
But
benefit are to support some people, and some people see them as having money taken away
from
them.
It's 2 things. First of all, on the defence thing, you can't make commitments without showing how you're going to pay for it. We've set out clearly in that announcement how we're going to pay for it. Labour won't match it, because I don't think Labour want to reduce the number of civil servants.
You're telling me sacking civil servants produces that increase in defence.
That is
ludicrous, Mark. Well, that's why people... You can't say these things and say you're serious.
We want to reduce the size of the civil service. Not doing anything ridiculous, just back to where it was before the pandemic.
Not anything ridiculous.
That's just the rest of it.
Just back to the level where we were just killing off disabled people and stuff, and doubling of homelessness. Yeah, that's what we want to get the state back to, ideally. fucking... I mean, I'm glad they haven't learned any lessons. That's nice.
No, true, yeah.
Our vote
Again, because literally the Boris Johnson mandate was to not do that. And they're just like, you know that manifesto which had all of this interventionist policy in that loads of people in the country voted for? How about we ditch all of that and become the party that was you know, that people really don't want?
Yeah, you know that manifesto that led us to the only sizable majority we've had since 1987? Yeah, let's do the opposite of that. Genius.
When I'm on the doorstep, people are saying cost of living. And although the government keeps telling them that everything is better and getting better, that is not their personal experience. It's getting worse.
Yeah.
And it makes them look so fucking out of touch. Like, the amount of times they go on Smile and go, actually, you know, we're on the economy's turned the corner even though it's in a recession. And people on the ground are just thinking about, are you fucking mental? Are you genuinely insane? Well, they're not insane. They're just completely insulated because in their cosseted little, you know, public school to Oxbridge to SPAD to Minister to Prime Minister existence, they've never had to deal with any financial hardship, and all they see as economic indicators that they've been kind of received wisdom to be taught is to be the only thing to judge an economy on. Like they can't think, well, actually, normal people are finding it tough, and so. You know, if they just came out and said, actually, no, we know that it's tough and we apologise for that, but, you know, we're trying to make things better, even if it might take some time. You know, things turning around. You proles are complaining for all the wrong reasons and it's making them look like a twats.
It's not true to say it's just Conservatives are staying at home. I mean, that's just not... You wouldn't see Labour winning Selby or Wellingborough or... You know, what we've seen tonight in Hartlepool or Thurrock, you know, if it was just Conservative voters staying at home, that wouldn't have happened.
Mark, just final word to you. I know you're a close ally of Rishi Sunak. You said there only two people have got a chance to be Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer. Are you confident that by when all of this, when the local elections
only
is
one
said
of
and
those.
done, that all of your colleagues are going to still think that and none of them are going to say, you know what, actually, the choice between Prime Minister for the country at the general election should be Keir Starmer and Conservative ?
No, I think the Conservative Parliamentary Party is going to be very clear that changing leaders is not a sensible idea. I think colleagues have liked what the Prime Minister's been setting out. I think they're going to get behind the Prime Minister. Yes, they have. There's been huge support for our defence announcement, for example, and our welfare announcement.
Has there?
And actually, we're rallying behind the party.
What world are you living in, lad? Because it's not the one everyone else is in. What the fuck are you talking about? It went down like a lead balloon.
Okay, and they'll notice that the only other party that can get into government has opposed that every step of the way, and we now see wants to have an amnesty for illegal migrants.
Again, that's
and that is
You're a fucking knob.
See, every interview, he's just a fucking one-man human car crash.
It's awful. What are you talking about?
What we do to stop those people traffickers.
Okay, well, we had a discussion already with your colleague Chris Heaton-Harris about whether lots of people arriving across the channel yesterday really showed that there was a deterrent effect. But we will now say thank you and goodbye to you, Mark Harper, and you, Jonathan Reynolds, for Labour. Susan, don't go anywhere. You're staying with us. You don't go anywhere. Stay with us. We'll bring you the latest titles on our giant tower. Labour's gained 31 seats now, putting them to 137. The Liberal Democrats gaining 8 on 43. Labour there, 137, having gained 31, and the Tories having lost 64, putting them on 35.
In the Lincolnshire seat, Tusk
gaining
almost got
18 to
10% of the
29,
vote.
doing well so far tonight.
Nice.
Residents Association
Pretty good.
there, that's what RA stands for, with 5 seats, not having gained any, but the Greens having gained 7, perhaps on course for a very good performance with their on 10 seats so far. So, lots more to digest after the news with Regini Vaidyanathan.
Thanks very much, Laura. Now, results are being declared in the local elections in parts of England.
No one gives a fuck about the news. Shut up. Right, let's have a look at what's happening on Sky, shall we? Sky News. I should just keep the page open, really, but I don't suppose it really matters.
Thurrock in Essex, in Hartlepool, to add this sort of area this really suggests that they are making
the
gains
declaration for Blackpool
in
South
different
at
kinds of
6 a.m.
seats across the country.
Oh, well, there's no way I'm staying up till then. Fuck that.
We'll see how long I last. See how long this pizza takes me.
Oh, is it here yet?
No. Estimated delivery 3:25.
Years, and they say this demonstrates just how much the Labour Party has changed with, of course, recent announcements on defence spending. So they're very pleased with that Rushmore result, which looks so far to be the first direct gain from switch from Conservatives to Labour, because don't forget, a lot of the councils that we're seeing tonight are already in Labour hands. It's whether they're extending their lead, but this would be a direct switch, and in an area where you wouldn't have expected Labour to be winning a couple of years ago.
Yeah, they really should. So, they should start referring to the Greens' rise as the Starmer bounce. Yeah, true.
Consistent Labour gains, where the big question is, of course, is it on the scale needed to generate a majority in Parliament at the general election?
Yeah, John McTernan and Salma Shah are still with us throughout the morning. John, what do you make of that Rushmore result?
It's a great result for a number of reasons. One, not having had a Labour majority council there ever before. Also, it suggests that the progressive patriotism of Keir Starmer, the branding with the Union flag on the leaflets, which caused a bit of a row inside the Labour Party, that feels to have been resonating there. And I think the third thing is...
Oh, brilliant. We've got the fucking nutcases from the Aldershot camp. Brilliant. The Progressive Alliance, lads.
It feels exactly, as you were saying, Tamara, Labour picking up in Hartlepool, Labour picking up in Thurrock, Labour picking up in Rushmore. You know, all you need to do, I suppose, is to get Redditch or Dudley, and you've got the full set.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if Keir Starmer visits there tomorrow morning. This is quite a big turnaround, from the Jeremy Corbyn years, and I'm sure he will be going somewhere like this to say, this is the evidence that Labour has changed.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, Salma, isn't it? It's one thing for the Conservatives to lose a council to no overall control, but for such a sizable shift as this...
It's so galling. The media created the nonsense of Jeremy Corbyn being unelectable, which made him unelectable, and now they're like, see, now we're not doing that anymore, they're electable again.
But he was so... But what about the 40% of the vote that everyone keeps forgetting that he got in 2017?
Well, that was all clearly the Hamas bounce.
That result. And it might also be, as John said, you know, that sort of, you know, wrapping yourself in the flag approach that Labour's taken recently. That might have something to do with it, that they don't feel like they're as much of a threat or as different from what a traditional Tory looks like. So all those factors to consider, I think.
Yeah, so much to consider, isn't there? And we've been talking about this throughout the morning, but we still haven't had any mayoral results. We're not going to get any in our time, but they are going to be pivotal as well, aren't they?
Well, they're going to be important, I think, for the Conservative brand. I mean, we've talked about it, you know, since we started broadcasting the election programme, which is what does this mean for Rishi Sunak? And you'll recall that when Rishi Sunak sort of came in as Chancellor at a very difficult time during the pandemic, you know, he had lots of infographics that talked about Rishi Sunak.
Just looking through this latest national poll of Westminster voting intention from YouGov from yesterday, the one that had Tories 18%. Oof. Amongst Leave voters, Tories are in third place in this poll, behind Reform UK and Labour.
Amongst Leave voters, fucking hell.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy, absolutely crazy.
They're
all
insane.
Yeah, amongst 2019 Conservative votes, only 43% would vote for them. Then it's 31 to Reform and 15 to Labour.
I mean, they're gone. They're done. They're done.
Again, it's going to be a fucking wipeout. It's going to be absolutely terminal.
Jova. Totally Jova.
Going to be...
Oh, hang on.
There is a Labour government.
No. Do you back to BBC?
You want to not be a Tory to win it.
Yeah, you should stop being a Tory, John McTernan.
More like John McTory.
Oh, got him. Absolutely got him. What is going on here?
By COVID-related supply disruptions, which led to unusually strong sales during the same period last year.
Have a look at this. I'm going to go through all of the individual results now.
The King and Queen have been presented with the official document recording their coronation almost a year at Westminster Abbey. For at least 700 years, monarchs
7% Tory vote amongst 18 to 34s.
The handwritten official record of their
12% amongst 25 to 49s. That's 49. That's half the fucking population age range.
Yep.
And it's like 12%.
Jesus Christ. Love it.
Camilla
Love
said
it.
she would need my specs to read it. Well, a reminder that
We're
you can
almost
follow
been
all the
overtaken by the
election
Lib Dems
results
in
overnight
voting
on the
percentage amongst
BT's
20,
website,
25 to
or of
49.
course on the app.
Lib Dems are on
You
10.
can also see who's won.
Honestly, the Lib Dems making a surge back just shows you how fucking short people's memories are. Jesus.
I mean, it's not even necessarily, they're still on like the same vote percentage that they were in 2015. It's just all concentrated in a very, very small amount of seats.
True.
Hey, Chimspeak, thank you for the 20 gifted over on YouTube. Appreciate you from throwing your money at me via Google because I'm a fake leftist.
And a warm welcome back to...
He's still going on about that one person.
It's too funny though. It's too funny.
It is pretty good. It is pretty. I'm also a fake leftist, so you can throw Google books at me too if you wanted to.
True, you can. You can gift memberships over on
That
Kevin's
is-
channel.
that is
I highly recommend it. Although when you gift memberships on Kev's channel, they're $2.99, not 99p.
No, I've got a 99p one as well. Let's not
But
besmirch me. I've got two. I've got two.
You
tiers.
do, but if you gift on YouTube, it automatically sets itself to whichever one is closest to $4.99.
Oh, does it? Oh, I didn't know
If you
that.
do gifts, yeah. That's why I don't have a second tier.
Oh shit! I didn't even know that. I will have to look into that. It's alright.
Thank you for the Mithril for the £10 super chat. I appreciate you. Thank you for keeping me stocked up on Ribena, which you can't see because my cam's off. But I do have a bottle of Ribena sitting right next to me, which is I bought because of Davinia. I do prompt me to buy the Ribena, but I appreciate you. You shouldn't be up at this time. You have a tenner. Well, thank you for joining us at this ungodly hour, Mithril.
Things happening with the smaller parties so far tonight. Let's say hello to two new guests, Jonathan and Jonathan. Well, this is going to be easy in a way.
Oh,
Jonathan Cullis from the
Jonathan
Conservative Party, a deputy chair, I believe. Deputy chair, not vice chair. I'm getting that right. It's early in the morning. And Jonathan Ashworth, who is the Shadow Paymaster General. So I think you call yourself Labour's attack dog, really. We're allowed to say that, aren't we?
If you want to call me that, that's fine.
Yeah,
I like to think of myself more as a pussycat, to be honest.
Oh, okay. All right. So maybe a few scratches and not biting. Anyway, we'll chat to you three in a minute.
You chummy cunts, shut up.
I'm pleased to say. Right, let's give you what has been quite a dramatic result. We've been able to confirm the numbers during the news. The Labour Party has gained Rushmoor Council from the Conservatives.
Not even no
You can see
overall
there they've
control.
got 21 seats to the Tories 15.
Ouch.
The Lib Dems with 3. Let's look at how seats have changed hands. Labour has gained 7 seats, the Tories losing 8, and the Lib Dems gaining 1 seat.
Hey, thank you,
change in
Colonel
share,
Jack, for the gifted
you can see
on
there,
Twitch.
Labour
And
on
thank you, True Boppies, for 10
Tories
gifted
on
over on YouTube. Thank you
37%,
both
and the
for the support.
change
Keeping me
in
employed
that,
here
we
on
can
Twitch
show
and
you
YouTube.
that. Labour gaining 16%. The Tories losing 17%. And I wonder if a bit later we can show you actually the swing there in that council, because that's really interesting. And Rushmoor, we will be on the ground there before too long, but I can tell you that's really interesting, and Labour is cock-a-hoop about that, because not just it's in Hampshire, the south of England, maybe not their natural territory, but they've never held that council before. And also it is the home of Aldershot, which of course is the home of much of the British military. And given how Labour has tried to show they've changed since the Corbyn years in the last few years, I expect that they will be shouting about
stop
the Rushmoor
saying that.
result
Why are they
from
obsessed
the
with it?
rooftops. Let's show
Full on Corbyn
Because
derangement syndrome.
It was the biggest victory the media have had in a long time. They stopped any kind of leftism.
Yeah.
And you can see what's happened.
They're just
the
flexing.
Tories lost 8 seats, Labour gained 6, and the Tories have been knocked off controlling that council. Currently, that area is split between 2 Conservative MPs. One of them will be a target for the Labour Party at the general election whenever we get there. So Labour will be pleased to have knocked the Tories out of control there. And let's check in then again with Tim Iredale, my colleague who's in Grimsby for us tonight. You were saying earlier, Tim, that Labour were looking pretty chipper about what they were able to do. Why do you think the result ended up as it is?
Yeah, you know, Laura, I think before a single vote had been counted here tonight, the Conservatives were looking pretty glum. They knew they were onto a loser here in North East Lincolnshire. Before these elections, the Tories had quite a sizable majority on this council, but it's gone now. The Tories are still the largest party, but it is a hung Council, because Labour made gains tonight, 6 council seats gained at the Tories' expense. Now, this is a classic red wall constituency. The parliamentary constituency of Great Grimsby was won by the Tories at the last general election.
Great Grimsby. I mean, there's PR spin and then there's that. Fucking hell.
Oh, now stop it.
A big blow.
Nicola in chat, can someone explain why Starmer is emerging the big winner tonight? Because Reform UK are gaining vote share and taking it away from the Tories.
Yeah. Again, like always, going to get into Parliament or going to get into power office by the Tories, essentially committing suicide, and that's basically what's happening tonight as well. He just has to completely fuck it up.
We're seeing like some gains in terms of the Labour vote, like broadly, like the Labour vote is like up. It's not up like a gigantic amount, but it is up. But there are plenty of seats where Reform UK have taken huge chunks out of the Tories, or they've moved to the Lib Dems, or whatever it is. Like all parties seem to, all the non-major parties seem to be gaining. Labour are getting like a bit, and then the Tories are absolutely crashing out in like everywhere. Nowhere in the country is safe for the Tories anymore.
Yeah, they don't have safe seats. Yeah.
And that's why they were punished here tonight. Now, Labour say they are hopeful of taking forward the progress they made here tonight. But remember, the turnout was very low in this council election, just 22%, Laura.
Jesus Christ.
Tim, thank you so much. We'll be back later tonight with news of the other things that are happening in your patch.
Isn't that normal? Like turnout for council election?
No, but I mean, I think it's a little bit below average. But the point
is
the democracy is so in such parlous state that 22% is even remotely tolerable.
We've been hearing, John, we're just talking about Rushmore being taken by Labour, Labour knocking the Tories out of control in North East Lincolnshire. Give us the context of the kinds of scale of Tory losses we're seeing so far.
Well, let me just first of all say just a little bit specifically about Rushmore, because this is where we need to get a little bit into the weeds of these elections.
We love the weeds.
As you'll be aware, Laura, in most of the councils, it's only 1 in 3 of the seats that are up for election on yesterday. But Rushmore was one of those councils where the ward boundaries have been redrawn, and therefore, as a result, all the seats were up for grabs. So that made it more likely there would be a change of control. And it's one of the Tories' misfortune in these local elections that these ward boundary changes have occurred primarily in councils they're trying to control. So that's point one. This was therefore more likely to go. Secondly, actually, if you look at what happened in Rushmore last year, you will already have seen evidence of the strong swing to Labour, and that indeed Labour won a majority of the seats that were up for election in the 1/3 contest in Rushmore last year. So basically what Labour needed to do to win Rushmore was to do as well as they did last year, and they have evidently done at least as well as that. So nothing to downplay the significance of Labour's success, but it's a success, as it were, that's been brewing for quite a while, and it's been facilitated by the work of the Boundary Commission.
They certainly look pretty happy about it. We're just showing some pictures of the Labour activists in Rushmore. There they are, all waving their hands in the air, although one of them at the front looks so happy he's not quite sure what to do with himself. I think, actually, let's just show those pictures in all their glory while we continue chatting, John. In terms of the overall picture from what we're seeing, how bad is this looking for the Conservatives?
It's not beginning to look very good for the Conservatives, I think one has to say. I mean, straight away, it's still early. Things could still change, but put it like this: there are two things that
they keep saying this. Stop. Look, John Curtis, clearly a very fine psephologist. I'm not trying to take the piss, but stop doing the diplomatic thing of it might change. No, it won't. It's going to get worse, both tonight and in general for the Tories. Stop pretending there's going to be some turnaround when obviously there is not.
And the two that they're.
I know it's good for the media to pretend there's going to be like a tight battle, but there isn't.
Going to end up being a little bit worse than it was last year. Put those two things together, the broad message from local ballot boxes will be that Rishi Sunak's principal political project, which is to try to narrow the need on Labour, has not really made much progress. It's what the polls have been telling us. It's now
not much progress. As the opposite.
That is what
it's sent them into like a tailspin downwards into electoral freefall, and that's before Nigel Farage campaigns.
But in effect, it looks as though we're talking about Labour doing more or less as well as they did last year, which is not bad, and it's roughly what the opinion polls were saying. But it's still the case that Labour are not in these local elections heading for the kind of really dramatic local election performances that they managed to achieve under Tony Blair before the 1997 general election. We're still in a very different world for that, not least, of course, because, for example, the success of the Greens, which is also notable in these elections. And
it's difficult to compare the size of councils in the UK to America because it's a very different structure. But it also depends on each individual council, because there are city councils, and in some places you have county councils, and all kinds of weird little small fucking places. So it varies from place to place. Is the best I can do.
Yeah, because I think in America you usually have like city and town councils based upon like urban conurbations and the way that they're mapped out. Whereas here we just have council like they have all councils like based upon constituencies which are drawn by the Boundary Commission, which then also include wards which shift around and can get cut off in weird places. So like, it's a really, I mean,
although you don't get
as well.
You don't get the gerrymandering nonsense that you have in America, where I mean, some of those seats are fast.
In like House seats, yeah, for like the House of Representatives, the gerrymandering isn't crazy, absolutely mad. Texas is the worst.
Yeah.
One of my favorite memes is it's like a what's the word I'm looking for?
Don't know.
A silhouette. So it's a silhouette of the Pokemon Onyx. It's like, who is that Pokemon? Yes. Oh yeah, it's Texas's 10th congressional district.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. Is it your fucking loop?
Yeah. Well, there's one particular one. I think it's somewhere like Minnesota, where literally it's essentially two big blocks of land, and it's connected by an isthmus, which is one street. What the fuck is that about?
Results coming across all the way through until Sunday, really. So we'll have a much clearer picture on what we see before us. But of course, we also accept this was a very challenging set of local elections. Obviously, people.
Oh, by the way, for any Americans watching, this guy is brain dead, so don't judge him too harshly.
Okay? Not just here in the UK.
I mean, he is British after all, so it's a very debilitating condition.
War in Ukraine,
yeah, but even by British standards, this guy is.
But what the Prime Minister did during that time is introduced a furlough scheme to make sure that people were getting their wages whilst also able to stay at home, protect lives, and help save the NHS, as well as. And the energy scheme, and particularly for Stoke-on-Trent ceramic manufacturers, getting 40% of their bills covered, which literally meant that the kilns could keep on firing. Yes, we need to get that message across much more. We have 5 clear pledges the Prime Minister must deliver on. We understand the importance of delivery, and we are making good progress, particularly with inflation that was 11.1% when he took office, now down to 3.2%.
What about changing your pledges to missions?
On the votes question, we now see clear blue water between the Conservative and Labour Party, where this week Labour have reaffirmed that they would cancel the round of flights and indeed now have a migrant amnesty into this country with what they announced only yesterday, which essentially means that 90,000 plus people will have a right to remain here indefinitely.
Well, we'll pick that up with Jonathan Ashworth.
So that's what they're going to go with. Labour are going to do an amnesty.
You've given us a lot to discuss then.
It's not true, by the way.
You say people have done this partly because of the pandemic, but your previous colleagues who sat in that seat have all said, well, actually, the last time this happened, we were in the pandemic, we had the vaccine bounce, we were much more popular then.
Well, of course, it was specifically with 2021, it was the fact that we were coming out of a second lockdown. About 60%, I think, of the population had their first jab. So it was well documented that there was a vaccine boost, and there was a high watermark with those elections. We were well above expectations in terms of what we achieved. Sir John Curtis himself has said that numerous times in the lead up to these local elections.
Maybe that's because you had a different leader.
No, not at all. At the end of the day, what the reality was is that we had, obviously, as I say, that vaccine boost, which was a very big boost at that time to us electorally. Obviously, we're coming off as well, let's not forget, a big set of results in 2019 where people like myself got elected for the first time in the Red Wall. But of course, what happened in 2021 is different to what's happened in 2024. We've had war in Ukraine, we've had unrest in the Middle East, and of course we've had the impact on energy spikes and prices as well.
The point, though, here, Jonathan Gullis, is it not, is that we might be just a couple of months for a general election, or perhaps 4 months away from a general election. Maybe my mental arithmetic isn't up to much at 24 minutes past 3 in the morning. But we are in the run-up to a general election. Everybody watching knows that. Everyone in the country knows that. And from the evidence we have so far, of appreciating it's going early, it seems that Rishi Sunak's hope of appealing to the country and turning things round is going nowhere.
Well, I disagree with that, because actually what the Prime Minister's done with inflation...
That's what votes so far tonight are
What we've seen with inflation is that it's now got down to 3.2% from that 11.1%. We've seen the Prime Minister therefore have the ability to not only continue investing in public service, about 160 billion now a year going into the NHS. Our increase from 2021 of 49 billion to schools up to 60 billion by 24-25, and at the same time cutting taxes for working people.
But you can't argue with the ballot box. The numbers are there. You're getting fucked. That's, you know, the customer is always right in that regard.
What you're doing better.
Well, we doubled down on what is the people's priorities, which is the 5 pledges that the Prime Minister has clearly laid out.
What does that mean?
Well, that means delivery means making sure that we do see that growth in the economy, and we've seen that with the package of what we've introduced in the last 2 budgets, that there is a very clear trajectory towards that growth. Ultimately, of course, we're still coming out of a global shock, as I say, led by the illegal war in Ukraine by Vladimir Putin, which had a huge impact on energy prices, as well as the cost of COVID. We know £500 billion has been spent across that pandemic and this current energy price spike by the government, something that is unprecedented, something which the Labour Party has supported. And bearing in mind that when Labour talk about change, Labour is saying they're going to copy and paste something that Rachel Reeves is very fond of, our fiscal rules. As I say, they're saying they're going to allow an amnesty for all migrants who've come here illegally, and ultimately they're also going to, and they can't make things add up, for example, like they've said in the past in 2021 they would like to scrap business rates. They've gone silent on that. They haven't explained how they're going to fund that or what they're going to change it to, because Labour simply doesn't have a plan.
OK, we'll talk to Labour in just a second. Jonathan Ashworth is waiting patiently there, but I want to talk about...
That was the deepest huff of copium I've seen in a long time. Well done, Mr. Gollis.
Which in the run-up to a general election is perhaps not the kind of thing that they should be expecting. Their vote is on average up by a couple of points on 2021. But so far tonight, it's actually down compared with 2023. We can show you that vote share there. Tories down by 13% since 2021, very significant. The Lib Dems up 2 since then. But let's just show you the change since last year, 2023. The Lib Dems actually down by 3%. Let's bring in Sean Kemp, who used to work in the coalition with the Liberal Democrats, Lib Dem former special advisor, who still monitors all these things very closely. Sean, thank you for waiting patiently to speak with us in the early hours of the morning. If you were still working at Lib Dem HQ, would you be happy with what you're seeing so far?
I'm going to be woefully predictable and say what John Curtis said that Lib Dems would say, which is I don't think they thought this would be as big a winning round of local elections as the last one was. So I think at the moment they're fine watching what's coming in. There's a bunch of seats that are probably going to come in sort of tomorrow, well, you know, later on today now, I should say, like people like Wokingham, Tunbridge Wells, and look at Dorset, where they're going to be paying closer attention to those because they're what they see as sort of key battleground areas for the general election. So I don't think they're looking at this and going, oh, we're worried it's not quite as great as last year, because last year was really off the scale great and way beyond what I think a lot of people expected for them. So I think they're okay with this. So I think if they can make some gains in the right areas, they'll be pretty fine with that.
What should they be doing differently, though? Because fine with that is not exactly the kind of thing that a party that really feels like it's on the march and on the way to significant progress, they wouldn't want to have a sentiment like that, would they?
If I was spinning for them, I would go, well, these are a smashing set of results and they're going to knock it out of the park in the general election. But I'm trying to be a bit more balanced. I think
you're not spinning for them. You're telling the truth to our viewers, I hope.
I think they'll be perfect. I honestly think they'll be perfectly happy if they come out of this round and they can see in the seats that they know they're going to be targeting the general election that they're doing quite well. There's 2 challenges I think they've got. One is just resource. You know, they're still, in a sense...
This person is literally worthless. I have no interest in what he has to say. He has nothing interesting to say. He might as well not exist. He's not evil necessarily or anything, just pointless.
So some of those votes that they would have been picking up, I suspect they're not picking up now. So that's maybe a reason why you're not seeing them sort of get the kind of votes that maybe you're thinking about. But I'm looking at this set of results and I think they'll be pretty happy, to be honest.
But why is that then, if votes that in a different era would have gone to the Lib Dems are actually now going to the Greens? How do you explain that? Is it the leadership? Is it a lack of difference?
I think there's a couple of reasons. One is still the long tail of coalition. And the other one is just a strategic one about where you look where the Liberal Democrats have to target their resources and where they're going to win.
Well, hello
I
to
think
you in
19 of their
Iceland.
top 20 target seats are Conservative held. Like there's no the values
Well,
there is
can't
trying
win
to
in
target
London, almost
Conservative
certainly, yes.
switchers, the Lib Dems, and
Right,
Labour
okay,
voters
foregone
in
conclusion.
those seats. They're
Yeah,
not
pretty
really,
much.
and nor should they be interested in chasing some of the voters
Smell
who
of
might
anchovies.
currently be going to the Greens, because that's not what's going to try and get them the seats they're going to need to win at a general election.
Sean, thank you so much for hanging us on. Really interesting to talk to you about that. Sean, making that point there that the Lib Dems really are now facing to Conservative seats much more strongly than they are to Labour seats. Interesting, let's look at our analysis of the numbers so far that we've seen, where the Conservatives are first and the Lib Dems are second. You can see there what's happening. The Tories have fallen away significantly, minus 13% so far since 2021.
And to be fair, it's
The
not
Lib
like
Dems just
the
up
Reform Party are
1%.
cleaning up there.
Susan, it's interesting. You've
being spread
represented, been
across
involved in the
the-
party for a long time.
across the
Is it
board.
now the case that the Lib Dems are overwhelmingly just going after disaffected Tories?
Well, I
Good night,
think
Rohak.
you may
Much
just
love.
find, as you start to see the Hull result, that we've just held Hull, which is against Labour. So, you know, don't write us off as a party that fights Labour. We do, but we do where we've been able to build that base strength. But I think at the moment the sense of pressure is we have got to get a change of government at the general election. That is something so driving and urgent. And that is one of the reasons why we're very much focused on working with Conservatives who feel that the Conservative Party is no longer their party.
Well, we can
and if I just let me look at some of the results that are beginning to come through there. So, you know, I've been keeping half an eye on the seats.
Progressive Alliance, folks.
Yeah, imagine if any of these wankers actually chased voters who weren't just disaffected Tories. Crazy, I know.
But it looks...
Like the Labour Party literally put out a tweet today going on about these former Tory voters explain why they're voting Labour. You don't need to. I don't need to listen to a word they say. It's because you're now the Conservative Party.
I mean,
That's why.
You can be someone who's voted Tory who's moving over, right? But the thing is that trying to explicitly court Conservatives rather than voters who voted Conservative is the difference, right?
Yeah.
That's in Essex. I just gently remind John Curtis, whom I think is wonderful and I'm a great admirer, but I do remember in the last election results at this time that he was making the same kind of comments about the Liberal Democrats. And then when we finally got to the end of the whole play and the weekend when all the results came out, we had won over 400 gains, more than any other party. I'm not saying we're going to do that same kind of momentum today. It's fewer seats, they're in different places and whatever else. But I'm suggesting to John we might be in a rather better position than that which I think he's suggesting.
Well, we can confirm some of the things that you were telling us with your incredible data on your phone. We've confirmed that the Lib Dems have held Hull Council and also that Hart Council in Hampshire is hung. So that is indeed what Susan was telling us, and the Lib Dems have indeed become the largest party in Hart Council in Hampshire. So she was trying to strike a more optimistic note than John Curtis was suggesting about the Lib Dems, quite rightly reminding us that there is a long way to go. And this is a really, really complicated jigsaw that we're putting together, isn't it, Chris?
Okay, I think I've had my fill for the evening. We've been going a while.
We have.
We've given good content, I think.
Everyone go give Kevin money. He's been streaming for a very long time.
Thank you. Everyone go and give No Justice money and love. Love is important. Are you carrying on beyond this?
How many viewers have I got at the moment? Over on. There's still 110 of you watching on YouTube.
Good God.
As well as it was 41 over on Twitch. Wow.
Nice.
It's been still people here. I don't know. Well, I feel like my commentary has become very lackluster at this point. But
to be fair, it is 3:30 in the morning. I don't know what people are expecting. Okay, well I'm going to stop sharing.
My pizza is really good, actually. Thank you, Alba. I appreciate you asking. I probably should just finish it there, to be honest.
Okay.
play some Magic Arena and go to bed.
Thank you, Navigator, for gifting a sub on Twitch.tv. Okay.
People that turns out my viewers, I say, they're getting ready for bed as well. So
yeah, that's fair.
I'll probably call that there. Where the question is, where
shall we go?
Where are we gonna raid Arena? Because we can both do it on YouTube and both do it on Twitch as well, because we're both streaming in both places.
Very much so. Who is going? Matt Binder's going.
Oh, Matt Bender. I like Matt Bender a lot, actually. Yeah, do some clout farming. Let's farm some clout together.
Yeah, fuck it. Let's go.
He was live over on YouTube.
And he is a
Riverboat Jack. Riverboat Jack is live on YouTube.
Wait, Matt Binder.
Actually, what? Matt Binder's part of a podcast, so he probably wouldn't see us if we do raid in. Whereas we could raid into Ray Farner, who's a little bit more of an underground streamer. Although she's part of the Young Turks, isn't she? So she's actually got. And she's on a podcast as well. Fuck it, we'll do Matt Binder anyway. Yeah.
Oh, for God's sake! With you're high on pizza.
I'm high on. It's late. I'm sorry.
No, it's alright. I don't give a fuck. Okay, I'm going to start raiding on the YouTubes. Go and say hello to the various people. Hang on. Edit. No. Do I want to edit video? No, that's not what I'm after.
It's edit. Customize.
People.
Live redirect.
Oh, hang on.
Other channels, then search Riverboat Jack.
Edit. Oh shit.
What pizza did I order? I got pepperoni and anchovy with fresh tomatoes and red onion.
Analytics. Edit. There we go. Redirect. There we go. Fuck me. Right. Who is going? Riverboat Jack. There we go.
Amazing.
Save.
Right, thank you, everybody. I appreciate you. I will be back on Saturday for my Saturday night stream. I'll do a stream on Friday, actually, depending on how late I stay up.